Hey, how's it going, everyone? It's Lee Halliday. And you know this technique when you're on Instagram and you click one of these images, it pops up in a modal. You can escape it. You can view another one of these sweet Doug the Pug pics. But if you refresh the page, you're no longer in a modal, but you're on a page dedicated to that picture. That's a technique Reddit uses as well. If you're browsing Reddit and you pop open one of these pages, you can hit escape. You're still in the same scroll position you were before, but if you refresh the page, you're now on a page dedicated to whatever post you're looking at. That's what we're going to be rebuilding today with Next.js, and in the process, we are going to be learning a little bit about the Next.js Router, how to do dynamic linking, and it should be a pretty cool video. So I've got this Next.js app, it says Home Sweet Home right now. It's not doing very much. It's already running in the console. And if I pop open the app, so far I've got just one page, the index page, which is our home page. And I've imported a few things that we'll take a look at later. But really all that we're doing right now is we have a functional component, home, and it is returning that div that says Home Sweet Home. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look into dynamic linking, and then we'll convert that to show a modal first. But if you refresh the page, you'll see you'll be on the actual page. You won't be in the modal anymore. So what we'll do to start is we will show these currencies here. We're going to be showing a list of currencies. It's nothing sort of splashy, but when you click into one of those currencies, you'll see the exchange rates for it. So that's what we'll be looking at, and I'll show you the API we're using to get those rates in a second. So first things first, why don't we just show a UL, and we will map the currencies, currencies.map, so that we can show each one. So in here, we'll have an LI. The key will be the currency that we're on. And then inside of the LI, for now, we'll just show the currency, make sure that it's working. So we got that here. So what we're going to be doing is using Next Link, which is how you create links within your Next.js application. So what we'll do is we'll wrap link around this currency text. So link. And inside of a link, you put an A tag. And it's sort of weird in Next.js, and it always feels a little bit like strange that you don't actually put an HRef on this inner A tag. Next.js takes care of that for you. But what we'll do is we'll put the currency in here, so clean that up. Okay, so this won't work yet. We have to provide Next.js with one or two things, depending if you're doing dynamic routing or you're routing just to a page that always has the same name. So you're going to have an HRef, and we'll talk about what that is in a sec, and you're going to have an as. So before I do that, let me just hard code these in here. So if you only have an HRef, it will take you to the page that you've linked to in the HRef here. So it's just linking us back to the home page. It's not really doing anything. But if you want to link to a dynamic page, that's where you need to start combining the two properties. So we'll look at what they are right now. So the as, this is what actually shows up in your URL here, in your browser path above. So what we want to have is a page that looks like currency, and then whatever it is, CAD or USD or whatever. So we'll put in currency here, like that. But the href, this is basically the page in Next.js that you want to link the user to. So it's not necessarily what shows up in the URL, but the page component that you have in your app. So we are going to create a new one in a folder called currency. And because we don't know what currency it is, we can't hard code CAD, USD, etc. So we'll create a dynamic page using the Next.js way of doing it, where you put square brackets, and inside you put basically a placeholder, whatever you want the query param to be called. So we will call this, let's just call it currency code, like that. A little bit long, but it's at least explicit. And for now, why don't we just make this page export a default function component called the currency page, and it will just return a div that says I am a currency, and we'll make it dynamic later. So to link to this page in Next.js, what you need to do is you need to, in a string, say currency, and then you actually put in here currency code like this, basically telling Next.js what page you're linking to in its internal routing structure. But then we have to pass the currency code. So we will pass that using basically like a query parameter. So currency code is equal to, and then we can pass in currency like this. Cool? So just to go over, we link to the page that matches currency and then this square bracket thing. And then we have to pass in the actual dynamic part. So what shows in the browser is this, but what Next.js sort of routes looks like this. So if we click in here now into CAD, we see that it is showing the right page, currency, but the URL up here looks like currency CAD, which is great because you can refresh and it shows that page. Let's now take that dynamic part and show it somewhere here. So what we're going to do is import the router. So we're going to import a hook called useRouter from, what is it, Next Router, I think. So now what we can do is access the router, saying const router equals useRouter. And once we have the router, we can access the query parameters. So we'll say const currency code is equal to router.query. So that is how you access the query elements of the router. And now we can show I am and then whatever currency code it is. Cool, so I am CAD, you could pop this over to USD, and it works great. So I'm going to just import a layout that I already created that will allow me to, basically as a nav that links me home. And it does not much styling, but a very tiny bit of styling. So I'm just going to import that now. So import layout from ... components layout, like that. So I'm just going to wrap this layout where I had the div instead, like that. And that gives me a home to basically link back home. I'll show you the layout in a second. It's not doing much. Let's go into our home. I've already imported it. I just haven't used it yet. So why don't we change this div to be our layout? So now we can click into a currency and then click back home. So we're doing dynamic routing and linking using link and this square brackets. And if we go look at the layout here, what it receives are the JSX children. So in this page case, it's just receiving this string. In the home page, it's receiving this UL as its children. And it's putting that all inside of a div with a nav that links us home. So if we look at this link, we're not doing any dynamic routing here. We're just taking the user to a static page, the home page. So that's why I only need the HRef. I think you can put the as, but it's sort of redundant. Yeah, like it still works. It's just not needed because they're the same thing. You only really need them when they differ. So here I'm showing the children, and then I've just got some styling, which is how I get this sweet green color of nav. It's the color of money. Oh yeah. Okay, so we have dynamic linking working. Why don't we quickly just go and fetch our exchange rates so we can show some dynamic data. So I am going to create a new component. We'll call it the rates, the exchange rates. And what we'll do is we'll just be exporting a default function component called rates that will receive the currency code. And it will use something else from I want to call them Zeit. What are they called now? Vercel. From Vercel. And that will go and fetch the rates from an API. So import happened, use, what's it called? SWR, stale while revalidate from SWR. And we'll come in here and we will say we're going to receive either data or an error equals use SWR. And here you always have to pass in a key that will be passed to a fetcher function. So our key is the currency code, and our fetcher function, which we'll create, we'll call it fetch currency. So fetch currency, it's going to receive the currency code, and it is going to use fetch to go and grab that. So why don't I just pop over to the URL. So we'll grab that. We'll put that in here and we'll replace the dynamic part with the currency code. And we need to return a promise that will eventually resolve. So we'll say .then. That will give us the response, and we'll convert that response to JSON like that. Cool. So with our fetcher function in there, we can just say if an error, we'll just return no money today, or no rates today. If there is no data, let's assume it is loading. Wait patiently. So if we're down here, we've got our data. So why don't we return a div that has an h2 that says rates for our currency code. What did I do wrong? There we go. And below we will do a UL that maps over the rates. So to map over the rates, they look like this. So data.rates, and it's a key value pair object. So what we're going to do is use object.entries, passing in the data.rates, and we will map its response. And the response looks like, so we'll just get our arrow function here. It looks like an array where we have the currency code and then the actual rate for that. So we'll pop in an li and we'll use the code for its key. And then inside the li, we'll just open that. Let's have a strong with the code, colon, and then whatever the rate is. Okay, haven't tried it. Wrote a lot of code and haven't tried it, so why don't we give it a go. We'll go into our currency code here. We will import that. So it's rates from components rates. And instead of I am a currency code, we can put in our rates. We can pass the currency code, which it's expecting as a prop, and hit save, and let's see if it works. Woo, nice. So there's the rates for CAD. And if you can see for a split second there, I don't even know if it will show up, but it says loading, then it pops in the rates. So if we go home, we can see Mexican peso. We can go home, we can see the euro, and it seems to be working. So now it's time to make this into a modal. And that's cool because instead of going over, having to click back button, we can just use our escape key. If it was a massive list and we're scrolling through, we won't lose our spot. So let's go take a look at how to do that. We're going to go back to our index. I'm using React Modal package for this. And the first thing you need to do with React Modal is you need to tell it like what DOM element your React app is mounting into. So we can figure that out by opening up our inspector, and Next.js always puts everything into a div with an ID of __ next. So we can just grab that and we'll say modal.setAppElement. And this is a function, I believe. Yeah, where we pass in a selector. So that will make our modal happy. It uses that to know how to position things. And well, to be honest, I don't really know how it uses it, but it wants it. Okay, so why don't we come and put our modal below the UL? I don't think it really matters where you put it, but we'll place it here. And what are we going to put inside of our modal? For now, let's just put a div that says in the modal, like that. So you need to tell the modal like when to be open or closed. So we do that by using a prop called isOpen. So if we just set it to true, it would always be open. Come back, you can see we've got this modal open. There's no way to close it yet. So that's what we need to take care of. You could control whether it's open or closed in state, but we will be using the Next.js Router to control whether it's open or closed or not. So the next thing we need to do is we need to switch up the HRef here. So instead of having it load the page that's this currency one that we've been looking at, what we're going to do is tell it, no, stay on the home page in terms of Next.js, but pass in a query parameter of currency code. But I still want the URL in the browser to look like that in case the user refreshes the page. So this is basically what Next.js will see, and this is what your browser URL will see. So if I just do that, let me close this modal for now. So you can see that the browser is showing this, but I'm still on the home page. So that's what we want. So now what we need to do is basically use this useRouter hook to access the router and see whether there's a currency code query param in the router or not. So we'll say const router equals useRouter. And what we can do is we can come down and we can, instead of just is open true or false, what we can do is look to see if there is a currency code. And there's a little bit of a hack we can do. We can double exclamation mark. I'll talk about what that is in a sec. We can say router.query.currency code. So this will return either null or undefined, I don't know which one, or the currency code if it exists. Having the double bang here basically converts it into the false form and then back to the true form. And what you'll end up with in the process is converting that null or undefined or string into a Boolean true or false. So if we come back here, click on CAD, the router detects that there's a query param on the home page and it shows the modal. But if I refresh the page, because the browser URL path changed, it shows me the actual page. So we're almost done. And there's just a couple things we need to do to have it completed. Why don't we show the actual rates page I created or component rather than just in the modal? So let's import that. Import rates from components rates, like that. So we'll come down and replace this. Oops. So rates, self-closing, it wants a currency code. And we can pass it the currency code that we have via the router, like that. So now if I click on CAD, it pops open the modal, it loads the rates for CAD. If I refresh, I'm on the actual CAD page. But it's cool because I could pop open Mexican, close it with escape. Oh, forgot I haven't done that yet. It doesn't work. So how do we actually close this thing? That's where we're going to come here and add another prop to modal. So it's called onRequestClose. So here it's a function that's called, and here what you could do is basically, if you were controlling whether it's open or closed in state, you could set the state. But what we are going to do, since we're using the router, is we're going to say router.push, and that's basically how you programmatically change the route in Next.js. So we're going to push a new route and it will be the home page, so the slash. So whenever the user requests to close it, the router take the user to the home page without any query params tacked on to that. So now if I hit escape, it closes. So I can open up NOK. I think this is Norwegian kroner or something like that. Sorry, I'm from Canada, so I don't know all of these world currencies. So rates for NOK, I hit escape, closes. I open up the euro, I click out of the modal and it closes. And if we just add a ton of padding between these, I created a class called huge, I believe it's called. Where's that? Yeah, .huge, that adds a ton of padding and stuff. So now we come in here and now we actually have to scroll a little bit. So if we scroll down to the Australian dollar, it opens up and it shifted a little bit. I think that has to do something with just my modal setup, but it keeps the scrolling for the most part. That could probably be fixed pretty easily by diving into React Modal a little bit. So you open up Norwegian kroner, close it. Oh, that one stayed, wicked. The euro, close it, etc. Okay. I think it's scrolling underneath. That's what's happening. If I just don't scroll at all, I don't know. Whatever. So we've got our currencies showing. When we click them, it opens them up as a modal. We can escape out or we can click out to close the modal. It keeps us on the home page. Or if we share this link with a friend and they paste it into their browser, they're going to get the whole page, not the modal, which is exactly what happens on Instagram. How do I get back to Doug the Pug? There we go. So if I open up Doug, if I share this link, they get the whole page. If they hit escape, they stay on the page that they're on and all the scroll is kept. So that's how you do a number of things with Next.js. We did route as a modal, and I will link to another example that Next.js actually has. So all the code's here, but I thought I'd walk through explaining how it actually works. We also looked at how to do dynamic routing using these square brackets to pass in dynamic portions of the page. And we also looked today at how to use the router. And we use the router in a couple ways. We use the router to grab the query params, like here, and like on the currency code page. And we also looked at the router, how to programmatically move the user around. Last thing we looked at is just how to use the link component that comes with Next.js, how to use the HRef portion of it, which is basically Next.js internal routing, and also how to use the as, which is how to control what shows up in the browser, what the user actually sees. This is sort of what your app sees, and this is what the user sees. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, how to do a modal via routing in Next.js. Take care.